What's going on in the world? Are lines being redrawn? Is there some serious saber rattling going on? There's a nuclear-powered submarine deal unveiled by a trilateral security pact between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. China, Iran, and Russia holding military drills in the Gulf of Oman. Spillovers of the Russia-Ukraine war, a Russian jet dumping fuel on a U.S. drone in flight. And the Philippines trying its best to mend fences with the U.S., but maintaining ties with Beijing. But first, here at home, the House of Representatives suspending one of its own for 60 days. Negros Oriental Representative Arnie Teves didn't show up at a hearing of the Ethics Committee to tackle an appeal to go on a 2-month leave after his travel authority expired. This comes in the aftermath of the killing of a political rival, the governor of his province, Roel Degamo. Good evening, I'm Pia Hontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix. Politics as usual, the House of Representatives suspending for 60 days Negros Oriental 3rd District Representative Arnolfo Teves Jr. over his continued absence. Teves has yet to return to the country despite the expiration of his travel authority on March 9. Our correspondent Paige Hontiveros reporting live from the Batasang Pambansa, where they've just gone on a break. No, sorry, not break. But Paige, tell us more about the voting earlier on the committee report of the House Ethics Committee.
Pia, House lawmakers unanimously voted to suspend their colleague Arnolfo Teves for disorderly behavior. 292 congressmen voted to adopt the House Ethics and Privileges Committee report. None voted against it, while none also abstained. Manila 3rd District Representative Joel Chua initially voted no in the first round but later changed his mind. Chua says he first voted no for personal reasons and because he did not yet see the committee report. But after reading the report, he believes there was enough basis for the suspension of Teves. House Speaker Martin Romualdez says they will never tolerate any conduct unbecoming of any House member. For ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro, a yes vote shows that the House is holding its members accountable and is not taking any sides. The panel report was tackled over 4 hours into the plenary session. Committee Chairman Filemon Espares submitted the report recommending a 60-day suspension against Teves. This is in line with House rules that state a suspension should not exceed 60 days. Espares says disorderly behavior affects the dignity, integrity, and reputation of the lower house. In the report, the panel said Teves failed to return to work despite the expiration of his travel clearance last March 9 and the rejection of his request for a 2-month extension for his leave of absence. The panel also cited the failure of Teves to present any evidence to support his claim that there are serious threats against his life. They stressed that Teves received all communications and orders but failed to comply. Teves has been implicated in 29 killings in Negros Oriental and has been tagged as the alleged mastermind in Governor Roel Degamo's murder. Pia?
Paige, why 292 yes votes unanimous tonight?
Well, Pia, I don't think this comes as a surprise because House Speaker Martin Romualdez himself, as well as President Bongbong Marcos, has been urging Congressman Teves to go home. And we all know that in the lower house, there's usually a super majority, or they follow up whatever the House Speaker and the leadership says. So earlier, when the vote came out, there was no objections. There was not much ado when they passed that motion to adopt the report of the House Ethics Committee. Pia?
Was there any other word, any reports from Martin Romualdez as to yung mga usapan daw nila ni Congressman Teves or Teves' lawyers?
Well, Pia, the last communication that we know between House Speaker Romualdez and Teves was when Romualdez said that he offered his house to Teves, that because Teves was saying that he had security threats, he was afraid to go back. But even then, Teves said that he was not confident to go back home, even if there were such security measures in place being offered by House Speaker Romualdez and President Marcos as well. But as of now, after this voting, we have not heard anything from Congressman Teves. We have not seen any new posts on his Facebook where he has been updating his status and any answers he has to House Speaker Romualdez, President Marcos, and anyone else who has been talking about him in the media. Pia?
Paige, why not expulsion? Because that is something that they could have also done. And at the same time, kung 60 days ito, that means March 22 to May 22. Yun ang period of suspension. So back to work si Arnie Teves kung sakasakali sa May 22.
Pia, we tried asking this to members of the House Ethics Committee today as well as yesterday, but Committee Chairman Espares refused to give any details. However, they said that based on the grounds and based on the committee report, most of the reasons were due to the absence and for Teves not following the House rules of attendance. So maybe this is the sanction that they believe is best based on the facts, based on what has happened and what they saw in their investigation. And yes, PF, ever Congressman Teves does return to the country, Congressman Espares said that he may return to the House, and this is also best because he may also be able to face all the allegations against him. And he will also be able to explain personally something that he has not yet done, because even virtually, he has not been allowed to speak to the panel or to participate in any House sessions or House hearings because this is not allowed under the House rules.
Paige, let's look back at a little bit of history. Since 1987, since the 8th Congress, since the 8th House of Representatives, has there been any other congressman or congresswoman who has been suspended by his or her colleagues?
Pia, based on what we've seen, I saw a case recently. I just cannot remember or cannot recall right now which congressman that was. But there was a congressman who was moved to be removed from the roster of Congress. I do not have the details right now, but there has been an expulsion. There's also been a suspension due to, I think, a gun clearance, but I cannot recall those details as well. So this will not be the first time that there is a lawmaker suspended in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, I think you're referring to Ruben Ecleo, the deletion of his name from the roster of the House of Representatives. But that was because of a Sandigan Bayan, a anti-graft court ruling, and not because the House itself went through the motions and expelled or suspended him, right?
Yes, Pia.
All right. Paige Javier, they're reporting from the Batasang Pambansa. Thank you very much, Paige, for joining us tonight here in Politics as Usual. We're going to speak to Attorney Levy Baligod, the lawyer for the Degamo, the family of the late Governor Roel Degamo, in just a bit. We're going to take a very quick break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual. We're still talking about the suspension for 60 days of Congressman Arnie Teves of Negros Oriental. Joining us now by telephone is the widow of slain Negros Oriental Governor Roel Degamo, Pamplona Mayor Janice Degamo, and also Attorney Levy Baligod, the lawyer for the Degamo family. But first, Mayor Janice, magandang gabi po sa inyo. I am sure you monitored the proceedings at the House of Representatives at suspendido na po for 60 days si Arnie Teves. Ano po ang inyong reaction dito?
We are grateful dahil may suspension siya, but we are hoping na it will be an expulsion po talaga sana. Ang dami po niyang ginawa na hindi talaga karapat-dapat gawin ng isang public official, isang leader ng isang distrito. At pero suspension lang ang naipataw sa kanya. We will not stop po. We will look at other angles na pwede naming i-file ulit sa Ethics Committee para makuha talaga namin yung expulsion kung mararapat na na maibigay talaga kay Congressman Teves.
Okay, Mayor Janice, yung sinasabi, yung binabanggit po ninyo na ifa-file pa po ninyo sa Ethics Committee, I'm going to ask your lawyer, Attorney Levy Baligod, to explain that. Attorney Baligod, so suspended po for 60 days, pero ang gusto po ninyo ma-expel, or, expulsion, ma-expel si Congressman Teves because, you know, when you look at the rules of the House, it's either suspension or expulsion. So this is going to be a test kung pwedeng after suspension, kung pwedeng expel. Pwede po ba yun, Attorney Levy? And then we'll talk about the case that you will file.
Yes, ma'am. Suspension, reprimand, or expulsion are the options of the House of Representatives in disciplining a member of the House. No? But this exercise of disciplining a member is a political exercise on the part of the House of Representatives. So, meron pong discretion ng House what penalty to impose on an erring member. Pero dito po sa iniisip naming i-file na complaint sa Ethics Committee, there is this very important provision in the Constitution na dapat hindi ma-violate ng isang member of the House or the Senate. And I am referring to Section 14 of Article 6 of the Constitution, which prohibits a legislator from having a direct or indirect interest in any contract, franchise, or any special privilege granted by the government or any subdivision, agency, or instrumentality of the government. And yung nakita natin na inamin ng lawyer ni Congressman Teves that siya ay nagmamay-ari ng isang franchise ng STL, that is a constitutionally prohibited transaction involving a member of Congress. At maliwanag po na na-violate yan ni Congressman Teves, kaya yan po yung basehan namin na mag-file ng complaint for expulsion from the House of Representatives.
So, Attorney Levy, very quickly again, so bukod sa suspension, yung 60-day suspension, it is still possible for the House to rule on what you are going to file and say, okay, apart from suspending him for 60 days, we will also expel him. Pwede rin po yun.
Yes, ma'am. We will file the complaint, and of course, the House of Representatives will observe due process, the right of due process ni Congressman Teves. He has to explain whether it is in fact correct that Congressman Teves has a direct or indirect interest in an STL franchise, no, yung small town lottery. That is a franchise or even a privilege, no, given by the government na dapat walang interest diyan ang isang miyembro ng Kongreso. And I saw the interview of one of Congressman Teves's lawyer na he was ranting. Ang sabi niya po ay iniipit ng gobyerno si Congressman Teves. In fact, pati yung STL na pangkabuhayan niya ay kinansela pa. No? And that is on record, I think. And that alone, no, yung admission of the lawyer is an admission against the interest of his client na mahirap pong i-deny yan.
And I suppose you have that recording and that is part and parcel of your complaint that you will file before the House Ethics Committee.
Yes, ma'am. That will be our exhibit number 1 or exhibit letter A to our complaint.
Yes. Okay. Mayor Janice Degamo is still on the line. Mayor Janice?
Yes po.
Yes, ma'am. Today, ang announcement po ni Secretary Boying Remulla is that there are 4 or 5 more suspects in custody already. And matagal nang pinag-uusapan na kung sino yung tinuturong umano na mastermind nitong pagpatay sa inyong asawa, the late Governor Roel Degamo of Negros Oriental. Ma'am, have you ever been able to speak to the suspects? Have you been able to get any other information out of them? And also, I remember one of the very first na revelations na ginawa ni Boying Remulla was that there was an supposed admission ng isa sa mga suspect na merong video conference na nangyari. And I remember asking kung na-record po ba yon yung video conference, and is that going to be part of the evidence of the case?
Una po, I have not personally seen all of them. I am not yet ready to look at them in the eye. And second po, relying on the assurance of DOJ that we have sufficient information na madiin talaga yung mastermind base doon sa salaysay ng mga nahuli. Confident ako, ma'am. Confident po ako na we will be able to get justice for my husband. Pumunta kami dito kasi gusto din namin talagang malaman kung gaano na po how ready are we na i-file sa DOJ yung kaso na makakasama talaga yung mastermind. And there are, of course, information na hindi rin namin pwedeng i-divulge at the moment. Pero I trust in what the national government has been doing. In fact, I am very grateful for the help extended to my husband and all other victims na kasama niya na nasawi at na ospital dahil sa pamamaril at pamamaslang kay Governor. Yung attention na binibigay nila, sabi ko, siguro kasama sa destiny ng asawa ko, yung even in his death, magiging key pa rin yung kanyang kamatayan sa pag-solve ng peace and order concern ng napakaraming maliliit na tao sa aming probinsya po.
Mayor Janice, is this going to be an airtight case? Are you going to be able to pin down the mastermind based on testimony? At bukod sa testimony, is there like video evidence? Is there
They were if kanina yung sa press conference, they were mentioning of quite a number of evidence na ipipresent, but they did not name them one by one kung ano yun. But I was assured na bago talaga i-file, it will be an airtight. We cannot afford po to lose the case na yung hirap na dinanas para hulihin sila, tapos it will end up lang na masasayang yung paghuli. Kaya kahit po kami sa side namin, gusto namin talaga na we will somehow be engaged doon sa marireview namin yung mga kailangang tignan bago talaga i-file. Because I owe that to my husband po. He has to be given justice po.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Vital phone, Mayor Janice Degamo, the widow of Governor Roel Degamo of Negros Oriental, and Attorney Levy Baligo joining us via Zoom. Sir, thank you very much for joining us. Ma'am, maraming salamat po. We will be back after the break. This is Politics as Usual. We're still on Politics as Usual. Our guest tonight here in the studio is political analyst Richard Hidarian. Of course, we're not going to talk about what happened in the House of Representatives unless you want to say something very quickly.
No, I mean, very quickly, just the first year of the president, we already have two high-profile cases like this, one from, Percy Lapid, and then now we have one member of the Congress. So this is a very troubling situation, yeah.
Okay. But also troubling or concerning what's going on in the world. Parang lines are being redrawn, is it right? Parang things are changing and moving so very quickly. What's going on, Richard?
Right, lots of realignments are happening, and we saw this coming. I mean, this has been in the pipelines for quite some time, since especially when China began its, geoengineering project in the South China Sea in late 2013, and since Xi Jinping became the president, of course, the invasion of Ukraine last year just, reinforced fears of a more chaotic new brave world, no? And this is where we are now. On the foreign policy front, the Philippines is suddenly in the middle of discussion, not necessarily for the reasons we had before, which is a president who causes the rest of the world, or the president who wants to completely shuffle our alliances. No, we are at the center of everything, because now what you see is that true trilateral alliances are coming out. So one is the AUKUS alliance, the Australian, UK, US alliance. This is a much more wide coverage, Indo-Pacific in the region, and of course that's why they're working on nuclear-powered submarines, not nuclear weapons-carrying submarine, but nuclear-powered submarines. The two are very different things. So this is also, of course, important in light of a lot of criticism against that. But the other one, which I think we should pay more attention to, it's more important to us, and I think it's even more urgent in light of potential invasion of Taiwan in the coming years, is what I call the JAFUS. Trilateral alliance, Japan, Philippines, United States. I think no one used that acronym, so I'll be the first. And I'll say, if you have AUKUS, you should have a JAFUS.
Spell it, J-A-P-H,
Japan, Philippines, United States.
J-A-P-H-U-S, okay.
Yes, so the JAFUS one is extremely important because Mavulis and Fuga, just you're talking about 100, 150 nautical miles from southern shores of Taiwan, not too far from Kaohsiung. And if you look at the Ryukyu Islands, Okinawa, Senkaku, Diaoyu Islands of Japan, also around 100 nautical miles from Taiwan. So God forbid, if something really happens in Taiwan, Philippines and Japan will automatically be at the very front line. And it just happens that both of us have a treaty alliance with the United States. And both of us, I think there was just a meeting between top defense officials of Philippines and Japan. We are also discussing visiting forces agreement with Japan, a reciprocal access agreement. This is what no one talks
BBM
about.
went there, no? Oh.
Yeah, people don't talk about this as much, but I think this trilateral alliance is even more on the front line and even more urgent because the AUKUS one, we're talking about submarines in the 2040s. We're talking about U.S. giving some of its submarines to Australia 10 years from now. The war in Ukraine could happen, in Taiwan could happen in the next 2 or 3 years, even based on some of the predictions. Now, obviously, no one wants war, but the question is, how do you prevent war? And this is where we go back to the old, Roman dictum, which is if you want peace, you prepare for war, right? Because if you're prepared, you have deterrence. And you have deterrence, you make sure conflict doesn't happen. So let's be very clear. AUKUS and JAFUS are coming in not to provoke China, but to precisely prevent the source of threat, which is to Taiwan, to South China Sea and East China Sea, from pushing the envelope further.
AUKUS and JAFUS. Recently, like we already mentioned, the BBM was there had gone to Japan for a visit. But earlier he had gone to China. China, January, di ba?
Right.
Tapos nag-Japan siya. Yung parang, para bang pumuposisyon tayo?
Right.
Ganun ba yun?
Yeah, I mean, you can...
well, we are strategically positioned, pero, when it comes to relations, and then, after having Rodrigo Duterte quarreling with the U.S. and, cozying up to Beijing for forever, for 6 years, now, BBM moving the Philippines medyo a little bit farther from China, closer to the U.S.
Obviously, BBM is not Aquino in a sense that he's not coming here and attacking China and being all just fine and dandy just with the West. So we're definitely not where we used to be 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But he's also definitely not Duterte. It's a completely different kind of approach to foreign policy because the situation is also very different, right? And we clearly saw Duterte, 6 years of strategic flirtation with China. How many big-ticket infrastructure projects we got again? How many real concessions do we get in the West Philippine Sea? Did the situation in Scarborough become better? Did the situation say no? And then Marcos Jr. goes to China in January, his first major state visit. Look at the very long joint statement. I only saw some bridge project in Davao mentioned. No, nothing major as far as infrastructure investment promises. The $24 billion they promised to Duterte back then, feeling ko yun ang na-repackage nila, naging $22 billion binigay kay BBM. Kasi halos walang pumasok eh. 1 billion lang pumasok. And then on West Philippine Sea, China offered him nothing. So I think against that backdrop, suddenly Bongo Marcos is thinking like, wait lang, I want to reach out to China, but I'm not getting much love here. Maybe I want to strengthen my leverage, right? I have to have bargaining chips so that I can get something from China. Then I have the American option, and good for BBM. U.S. is, arms wide open for him.
Only too happy.
I mean, he is, who would have thought a Marcos Jr. will be treated as a breath of fresh air in the West? But that's it. Thanks to Tatay Digong, thanks to President Duterte, Marcos Jr. is really being welcomed, arms wide open by the West, by Japan, by Australia, by Europe. So he feels confident with the West, and he feels he's not getting much love from China, hence what he's doing. But what I said is this. There are certain facts. First of all, you cannot choose your neighbors. We cannot choose that Taiwan is just over 100 nautical miles from some of our naval bases. Second, allies cannot be neutral if it comes down to conflict. You cannot have a situation where China is killing American soldiers, there's a war over Taiwan, and you're going to say, I'm sorry, we're neutral. You know, we're treaty allies, but we're neutral. It doesn't work that way, right? If you're allies with America, you are next to Taiwan, the best thing you can do is actually at least prepare and even more deter that.
Well,
contingency.
prepare, you know, for more EDCA sites, for example, the
Because
VFA,
if China is going to invade
Balikatan,
Taiwan,
etc.
if China is going to invade Taiwan, they will automatically treat the Philippines as a fallback option for US or potentially even a supply line for it. So we're going to be a target regardless. So better prepare for
We
it.
have no choice.
Nonetheless, we still have room for maneuver. Pwede pa rin natin i-dribble yung EDCA. In what sense? For instance, there were plans initially to have a lot of exercises in Ilocos Norte. Biglang pinalit yung plan. I mean, you have no less than Amy Marcos, presidential sister, expressing some concerns. Yung bases na i-open sa EDCA, hindi pa finalize yan. Kaya nga sa 2+2 discussion in Washington, D.C. next month, and when BBM goes to the White House, that's where we're going to discuss it. Isa pa, you can still determine ilan yung mga American troops na papasok for Balikatan exercises. It was 9,000 in total almost last year. It's going to be 17,000. But next year, we can make it 4,000 if China gives us something. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Even
right,
the type of
right.
exercise, is it going to be HADR?
Yeah.
Is it going to be war games, amphibious island defense attacks? So what I'm saying is, the die has not been cast, but of course, the more access we give to Americans, the room for maneuver shrinks,
Right.
but it's not totally gone.
Right.
So if matalino or magaling yung gobyerno natin, we can constantly use this leverage points, get something from China, dribble it here and there.
Right.
So my fear is, maybe the first moves are interesting, but the next moves yung follow through baka medyo doon mag-stumble tayo. I hope not, but this is the concern I have right now.
But in other words, we can roll the dice and say, well, if you want us to do this, maybe you can do this for us. That's diplomacy
and we're not
anyway.
all in yet.
That's negotiation, right?
Exactly, and we're not all in yet. As I said, we still can tweak and twist EDCA in ways that doesn't totally provoke China. Because, for instance, are we going to give Americans as early as now some access to Fugu Island, Mavulis, where we have naval bases? We can say no, right? So there's so much still we can do about it. But to a certain degree, of course, even if Marcos Jr. wants to balance between US and China, it's going to be very asymmetrical. It's going to be more like this, right?
Like this, meaning what's this?
Meaning it's not equilateral. It's not
Ano yung mas mabigat?
clearly with Americans, right? Unless the Chinese offer us something, then we can make adjustments. But it will never be symmetrical. And this is nothing unique. Singapore has been also in a similar situation. Of course, they don't have a treaty alliance with the US, but they always give the Americans one defense deal, the Chinese a defense deal, but it's never symmetrical. So this is where a true independent foreign policy is dynamic and asymmetrical because it changes depende dun sa panahon, no? And that's why I'm hoping to see more dynamism on the part of this new administration because wala pang 1 year, huge moves ang ginawa ni Marcos Jr. Like, wow, not only traveling the world, I mean, malapit na ma-circumnavigate, diba? You know the context, right?
Okay.
But big moves with the EDCA, everyone's excited starting about the Philippines, kaya nga I'm now talking about JAFUS, right?
Yeah, much to look forward to, not just AUKUS, but JAFUS, like you were
JAFUS.
saying, Japan, Philippines, US, that's JAPH, US. So much more to talk about, but very little time as usual. Richard Adar, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table. And by the way, Xi in Russia and Kishida in Ukraine pa. Or the family reunion, or in Viber groups at Risk Warfare, digital or otherwise. But we can talk about it here at this table on this show. Your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pia Hontiveros. See you back here next Wednesday, 8 p.m.